Good morning. Thank you so much for that kind welcome. It's great to see everybody back at this morning. Yesterday was a great day here at our conference. We had an opportunity to kick it off with Daniel Sperling's talk and seeing where we are on the decarbonization. And this morning I want to pick up and specifically focus on the California ZEV mandate or quota, our regulation that we have been working on to transform our transportation for the passenger cars for the ZEV technology. So it really is about winning hearts and minds because we know that this is a revolution. We're asking consumers to think about something that is near and dear to their heart. And I think this is true with Germany as well as California. People love their vehicles. It's part of their family. It's a culture, a rite of passage. There are so many things that we associate our vehicles with. And so in my talk this morning, and I want to be very mindful of the time, we have a really dynamic panel. And so I'd like to break my talk up into three specific areas. First, I want to give you a sense of what California has done for our policies to get us where we are today. Secondly, I have 4 barriers that I want to share with you from a personal perspective of what I see as things that we need to overcome in order to truly accelerate the adoption of ZEVs. And third, I'd like to talk about and wrap up a little bit more of what we talked about yesterday, and that's truly winning the hearts and minds. Because, you know, we as policymakers, we can be pretty brilliant on paper. I mean, just ask any of us. We're really good at getting in a room, seeing the problem, identifying the stakeholders, figuring out what we should do, crafting a really good regulation, if I don't say so myself, and then voila, we have to sell the public on it. Sometimes they're not so keen on our very thoughtful ideas on how we should change their lives. And so truly winning, coming up with those strategies to win hearts and minds is going to be the ultimate key to make sure that we are successful. So to kick off, California absolutely has a strong need for zero-emission vehicle regulation. We have over 25 million registered vehicles. We drive over 800 million miles every day, and we use 29 million gallons of gasoline consumed every day. So in order for us to meet our goals in both criteria pollutants, which is why we started regulating vehicles, and to meet our greenhouse gas goals, we have to have a zero-emission economy. This slide I wanted just to go over quickly gives you a flavor for how long we've been doing this. We started our ZEV mandate or our quota on OEMs in 1990. At that time, we had very ambitious goals. By the way, we were going to be at 2% market share by 1998, 10% market share by 2003. It seemed from a regulator perspective that this should be fairly, not simple, but certainly something that one could work into their business model and make happen. And as a CEO of a chemical company and understanding what it's like to have to change my formulas in order to meet rules and regulations, what truly happens in practice versus what looks good on paper is often two different things. And so where are we? 2018, and we're still talking about some of those things that we need to overcome as we did in 1990. So my point is that we've been at this for 28 years, and we're still pushing that ball forward. Another very important date was in 2002 when it was adopted that we would have the automakers reduce their greenhouse gas footprint. In fact, I joined the board in 2004. My first meeting, I was a board member for 30 days. My first meeting was, in fact, adopting this greenhouse gas, the Pavley law, in 2004. That was pretty exciting. 2010 is when we actually started introducing incentives for ZEVs. And 2012 is an important milestone because we took several policies, 3 policies, and we put them under one umbrella so we could start helping the autos think about a holistic approach, not only to reducing greenhouse gases, but criteria pollutants. And so that was an important milestone. And then, of course, in 2013, $20 million was added annually to develop our hydrogen network. Our ZEV program is hitting a real milestone. For our next period, compliance period of 2018 to 2025, it will be the first time that we require year-over-year growth, 2.5% each year, and capping at 22.5%. This is unprecedented in the fact that the other years up until this point, they had milestones, but they were much more in line with an R&D, pushing innovation. Now we're starting to say, okay, we have the product, let's start pushing the marketplace. And so that's gonna be great information for us as we tackle those barriers. The automakers have done a great job, and we'll see another slide in a few minutes, or in a minute, talking about this. They have bank credits. So our system, you know, on one hand, the system was very thoughtfully designed, and it was designed so that automakers could earn credits, and they have to attain so many credits per compliance period. And those credits are designed by types of vehicles that we really want to push. So as you can imagine, the 100% zero emission vehicles have greater credits than plug-ins. So it is a credit system. On the other hand, that's very difficult to relate to the average citizen. What's a credit? So we talk in the public about number of vehicles, but it's a little bit of a mismatch at the end of the day because the autos are required to earn these credits versus the number of vehicles. So this is a slide we use quite often, and the gray slide in behind was the slide that I brought, and then our governor had the State of the State address, and he upped the ante on me. So the original was we were going to have 4 million to 4.5 million vehicles on the road by 2030, and we have just upped the ante on that, and Governor Brown has recently, a few days ago, issued an executive order saying that we're going to get 5 million ZEVs on the road by 2030. And don't forget, as Professor Sperling said yesterday, we categorize ZEVs as anything with a plug. So plug-in hybrids, battery electric, fuel cells, anything that runs on electric gets counted in this projection. And so I added the red and the yellow arrows to indicate that we're going to go a little steeper climb, and it looks like it's very feasible. Then we would attain the 100% of sales probably sometime in the 2040s. But this is a steep climb. Okay, they showed me this clever thing here. Okay, this is a steep climb because, see, this is where we've been. And this has been a lot of heavy lifting, by the way. This isn't that people have been sitting back and just waiting. This has been all of the R&D, all of the development, all of the various companies coming, looking at how they're going to stay competitive in this marketplace. Not only that, we've had infrastructure issues, plus getting to the consumer and developing all those policies. So this has been a very active time. And now we see that and we're pretty well on track to where we expected to be in 2020. But now look what's going to happen. However this mix happens, this range here is what we need to attain our goal, and our governor now has put an extra caveat to say, nope, let's really go for it because we need this sooner than later. But it's just not the cars, right? We've got to have the infrastructure. So in this chart here, on the right-hand side, we see the EV chargers. We have 15,800 chargers currently in California. That is a 12% increase over our last count over the last couple of years because we've really been putting a very strong focus on it. We're also banking on hydrogen, and we're building hydrogen stations. Over the last 2 years, 31 of those stations opening up in California. Hydrogen stations have to go through the same process of being sited, doing environmental assessment reports, and being built. So not only are they costly, but it does take a period of time to get them built. But growing that infrastructure is a challenge. And right now we have a goal of 250 chargers with 200 hydrogen stations by 2025. You'll be hearing later from Janaea Scott from our Energy Commission. They are responsible for siting and building those, or issuing the funding for building those stations. We also have our California Utilities Commission and Electrify America now, which is the VW settlement investments, are all focused on building this infrastructure. On the EV side, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we also have private companies that are out there building EVs and looking for that model on how we're going to be selling that refueling. Our ratio of ZEVs, current ZEVs on the ground, and our refueling infrastructure is behind in California. And it's the lowest in the nation because we have the most EVs on the road. And that is something that is a customer perceptive barrier and something that we're taking a look at. Prior to the state of the state, the efforts that I just talked about was going to cover about 50% of our target. But now with Governor's $2.5 billion additional investment over 8 years, we are going to start closing that gap. And because we know without the infrastructure, that's one of the barriers that if we can't overcome that, that is a big problem. One of the things that we count that the ZEV mandate has been very successful for us is because we have great partners within our United States. 9 states have adopted the ZEV mandate And what that means is that under our Clean Air Act, states can choose to go with the federal standards or California standards. And we have 9 states that have adopted the ZEV mandate as well. And we all know that economy of scales is very important to any company, and the more, the better. We also are very proud that we have some multi-state coordination, and of those 9 states, 8 of those states have signed ZEV memorandums of understandings with California. We're working in concert with each other. And then, of course, the multi-jurisdiction coordination that we're doing internationally, and look forward to future coordinations with Germany, for example. Incentive programs are critical to any type of customer change. And with the ZEV program, it has been one of the instrumental programs that we have designed and implemented. We not only have rebates, and those rebates come from the federal government, the state government. We also have access to our HOV lanes, our carpool lanes, and in Los Angeles traffic, that is a huge incentive that a single occupant car driver can get into an HOV lane and beat some of that traffic. We also have the OEMs who are offering incentive for the customers, free charging, as in Tesla, or hydrogen fuel cars like the Toyota Mirai. And so we are seeing just a suite of incentives to really lure the customer in to try this new technology. So what is our success to date? With the suite of comprehensive policies, the commitment of the OEMs to 42 different models, the infrastructure, the myriad of incentivized programs, and job creation. We look at Tesla, whose factory is in California with 10,000 people, and the myriad of companies that are installing infrastructure and those jobs that have been created. With all of that in this 28 years worth of work, we are at 5% market share today. So you can see the challenge of what this is in front of us. And to look at numbers, California has on the road over 360,000 vehicles, which is about 5% of new car purchases. And where are we heading? In 2025, our goal is 1.5 million, and the governor just gave us a stretch goal, stretch, of 5 million cars on the road by 2030. And you look at that 8 years away, 13 years away. As he stated, we have a lot of work in front of us, but we're up for the challenges. So what are those barriers that we need to overcome? First of all, we really do have to, as in my opinion, and this is with my business hat on, right? It's great to establish these policies, but if I don't have a sustainable business model, it doesn't have a run rate. It's not going to last for the future. And so cost parity right now is being covered by the OEMs to sell cars. You can't do that forever. They're offering deep discounts through favorable financing. The depreciation is still greater than its counterpart, and the secondary markets are underdeveloped. Secondly, it's unclear what the business model is going to be for infrastructure and refueling. These are two critical points that as regulators, as policymakers, I think we have to engage in this conversation. We are not passing a regulation that is asking manufacturing to tweak or change or develop a product that works like the consumer is used to having. We're asking them to revolutionize how we think about and what we do. If we're going to be successful, we need to partner to get to the finish line. Then the two other major barriers, it isn't clear to me to what extent the business disruption is for the supply chain, going from the manufacturer to the consumer. In the United States, that is automobile dealerships, and there are laws that require a separation between OEMs and the point of sale. The model for selling ZEVs is totally different than the business model of selling conventional vehicles. You don't have the maintenance, which is a huge revenue stream for these dealerships. If you remove the need for maintenance, which the ZEVs do, you have totally disrupted their income stream, and we've got to figure that out. So it isn't a big surprise that the dealerships are not excessively excited about selling this product. They are, but they would prefer to continue selling the conventional product. So besides needing the sustainable business model in place, understanding the change for the supply to the customer, we really have to go beyond thinking customer acceptance as if they are changing colors or changing a product like my product, paint. It doesn't dry as quickly. It doesn't last as long in some cases. There was some characteristics, but it applied the same and it did the same thing that it did before. We're asking people to truly make a fundamental change in the way that they look at their transportation. And in order to do that, I think it is winning hearts and minds. So let's take a look at that. You know, Tesla was a game changer without question, because what did Tesla show us? Tesla showed us that with the right marketing and the right product, electric is cool. And they took the electric out of the vehicle because it had the range, it had the pickup, it had the style, it had a lot of cool technology on it. It really is a game changer. Well, what's the challenge? Tesla is also the first new car company in the United States in 80 years. And there's tremendous barriers of manufacturing mass market. And that's what we're seeing in the Generation 3s. Every day I get up and say, please, Elon, can you just make those Gen 3 cars? 300,000 people have put deposits down. They're just waiting. They want those cars all over the world. So Tesla has showed us that electric cars are cool, and if we look at how we develop the market, it is quite, it not only is possible, but people want these. In a UC Davis study, half of Californians are not even aware of ZEV vehicles. So with everything we've done to date, half of our citizens are unaware of electric vehicles. 30% are aware of our incentive programs. Of that 30%, only 17% was aware that California offered an incentive program. So you can see the challenge before us that as we kind of live in our own bubbles, right? My job as a regulator is to write the policy and to communicate with various stakeholders who are directly involved in that policy, and their job is to communicate with their customers and to make this happen. But this is so transformative that I think it does have to be a partnership. This graph also from UC Davis, for me, is extremely hopeful because although in the 300 out of 1,652 people, 302 people, about 17%, said, nah, I'm never going to buy an electric vehicle, not interested. But the 520, albeit had never thought about it, are open-minded. And the 541, which, oops, sorry, I got my buttons mixed up. Out of this side here, we represent 50% of the consumers that say, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I'm very open. I've actually done some studying and looking into it. I'm planning on buying it as my next vehicle. I already own a ZEV car. If we were to take this part here, this is 80% of the customer base. This is a home run. So it's really, we need to harness this energy here to move forward. So what do we need for that? A comprehensive strategic approach, actually, not a program, but an approach with all key stakeholders. And I believe very strongly as policyholders that we need to have skin in the game. It is not going to work in the timing that we want it to work to say, OEMs and businesses, you take care of this. That is the old model. The new model, which is a transformative way of thinking, is we all need to get to the table to figure this out. In California, what's happening today is this very illustrious list of organizations and groups are doing outreach and education. They're doing everything from rideshare programs that include electric vehicles, but also taking electric vehicles and loaning them to families for a week and introducing it that way. We have those pilot programs on the electric car share. We're expanding incentive programs for medium to lower income. And quite frankly, we need to lead by example. So for example, in our room today, how many of us have an electric ZEV car as our primary car? Okay, this is, those that raise your hands high, okay? This is our audience, thank you. This is our audience. We are now preaching to the choir. If we have barriers to buying ZEVs, how can you think we're going to overcome the barrier of having your neighbors who are going, what? I've got to think about the range that I'm going to be driving today and if this is going to be enough. What about my summer trip when I go camping? So for me, it was sitting up at the dais at ARB and realizing that I was voting for you to buy that car and very happily driving my Lexus. So that started me on my own going and buying a Nissan Leaf. And my husband would tell you, and one of the wonderful things about the California Air Resource Board, everybody thinks we're a pretty hard-charging, heartless agency, but I can tell you that Dr. Daniel Sperling and I met at the California Air Resource Board and got married 3 years ago. So there is love at ARB, despite what you might hear. And but I'm the pragmatic one, by the way. He's the visionary, right? And so every time I would get in my Leaf and have a challenge, I was, believe me, on the phone going, what are you thinking? This is never going to work. I only have 8 miles range. Does that really mean 8 miles, or do you think I could go 12 or 15? I am 20 miles from the house. But, okay, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. And, oh, by the way, he was in Sweden. So it is a learning curve, and it is a challenge. I am a Tesla owner now, and now it is about the automation. And we have the auto drive, and we're in auto drive. It is, now Dan will tell you that, oh my, you should relax, it's great, the car's thinking. It is like having your 16-year-old drive for the first time. Because what's happening? You're waiting for the cars kind of correcting itself in the lane. And so there's a lot of change. And in this change, we in this room have to lead by example, and we have to start thinking about things differently. How we talk about the use of cars, how we think about our mobility, and how we talk about it to our friends, because that is something that we're not doing and that we aren't getting the word out. So what we know for sure is we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. As we look at this, we do have to create more partnerships. We have to be engaged. We have a very short window in which we want to accomplish these goals. And we know in business that solving a problem, you usually have a choice between time and getting to the goal. Which are you going to sacrifice? What we're saying is we're not going to sacrifice either. We need this problem solved. We need these ZEVs on the road, and we need them tomorrow. Thank you.